Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on RotoGrinders.com. I'm filling in again once for Travis Mangone. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender Ed, Blender HD on Twitter and on RotoGrinders. Travis, I don't know where he's traveling to or what creepy relative's room he's going to be recording whatever shows he's doing this week from. But I'm back again with Stewart Gibson from ASA. How was your week last week?
Not so great. I was off Carson and Saquon to go with just some different guys, Fournette being one of those, and didn't do great. I don't know. I took kind of a higher upside, lower floor lineup, hit with some guys like McLaurin, but I've just been the slide since Thanksgiving continues on, so hopefully can right the ship here in week 16.
My week came down to picking the right Jaguars wide receiver, either the one that scored 2 touchdowns or the one that didn't score 2 touchdowns. I picked the one that didn't.
Yeah,
so I lost.
Same here.
Essentially, that's what it came down to. Because in catch, I faded Carson as well. I played Barkley instead. I played the Barkley McCaffrey type of lineup with Patrick Laird, but he got me 7 points. And everything looked fine other than it was the matter of Westbrook in a defense or Conley in a defense was my 2v2 and I chose wrong. So that's really what it came down to. Westbrook could have caught those 2 touchdowns or at least if it would have been even one each, I would have won. I mean, it came down to bubbling off a lot of double ups by just a little bit, but for the most part, Barkley ended up doing better than Carson. And I didn't play all 3 of them together. But I just, the Barkley Fournette conversation, because Fournette was on my radar. I did play him in GPP. It just comes down to, I view the long-term, running back performance. I mean, I'm sure you've done the research that from a long-term sample that the ones that are at home and favored are going to perform. There's a correlation between that and their fantasy points. So when given the choice between 2, Barkley was home and favored. Fournette was on the road and not favored. I know Fournette has, that target volume or whatever. If it's a coin flip, I'm going to choose the home favorite running back and just go with that.
Yeah, I think with Barkley, there's an interesting consideration of just how long of form do you want to take when considering a player. And I think we've actually talked about this more mid-season and our models are using last 300 days, which effectively says, once you reach November, let's consider players' performance to date in the given season as kind of the baseline for, what their efficiency metrics are per touch, per rush, per target. And in the first half of the season, let's use a mix of their efficiency performance in the second half of the previous season and what they're accumulating to date in the current season. And Barkley is one of those guys where I think that 300-day window, which is perhaps a bit on the short side. I mean, I could, I think there's viability using a full calendar year or even the last 2 seasons. Barkley's efficiency has been quite bad this year. And when you remove any sort of longer form performance metrics from the previous year, he doesn't look like a very strong running back. But if you kind of, the return of Eli Manning and maybe, had some reason to believe that there was, he could benefit from some efficiency boost with that. I think he probably would have shown up a little better in our models. I'm just using the game theory aspect of now I'm not using Barkley as a person or Carson as a person. I'm just using insert running back as
that price for the past 20 years in fantasy scoring, and just like home favorites with higher totals outperform ones. Like, don't even be biased by like, well, Barkley's been bad this season. Carson has Penny. Sure. Like, just the projection is close enough that like when in doubt, I'm just going to go with the data from God knows how big on just running backs in general, and favor the home favored ones with higher totals than the road underdog ones with lower ones.
Gotcha.
So I understand exactly what you're saying about what with the form or anything, but sometimes I try to dumb it down even further and go, like, at the end of the day, I think Barkley gets as many opportunities as Carson. I just disregard, like, it's opportunities. So if you tell me they're both going to get 24 touches, and Fournette is going to get 24 touches, like, I'm going to side with the ones that are just home favorites, and for cash games at least, and then just go with the fact that typically bears out true over the course of multiple years.
Yep.
So for this week, we're going to skip the 3-game Saturday slate. From a GPP perspective on that slate, if you're watching this, ownership's going to be condensed. People are going to flock to certain players. Feel free to, in the large tournaments, just be different and just get lucky. Like, to me, that's my attitude going into Saturday. It's like people are going to look at that Texans and the Hopkins and the Watson combinations, and I'm going to do just like I did on Thanksgiving and stack and like I did with David Blau and just stack the lowest total team, because you never know what's going to happen. So at least that's what I would recommend if you're playing the large field GPPs on Saturday. But on Sunday, we got a normal slate. We got 11 games. We got a whole bunch of, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 afternoon games. So it's pretty spread out. So let's start with the first game, which is Carolina at Indianapolis. Carolina 20.25 current implied total. Colts 26.75 implied total. Is this one of the weeks where McCaffrey is not like a necessity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say at this stage, but I do think, like, one reason I've really been playing a lot of McCaffrey this year is because of how high his floor is. Like, it just seems like he is guaranteed to get to like 25 points each week, independent of game script, and he's really benefited in recent weeks in his team's losing efforts from just a ton of checkdowns from Kyle Allen. And yeah, I think with a new quarterback in there, there's just more uncertainty. I don't have a ton of good information on Will Grier. I know Kyle Allen was very checkdown prone, and I think that really helped out CMC. I think with Will Grier, there's just more uncertainty. As I understand, he's kind of a big-armed quarterback that is in kind of this gunslinger type build, which I would think probably isn't super favorable for McCaffrey. So yeah, I don't think he's quite as much of a necessity this week, and I just think it's also one of the weaker matchups he's had in recent weeks. Indiana is pretty solid defense. They're going to be super slow paced. They're going to try to run the ball against this really bad Carolina rush defense with Marlon Mack, and just chew game clock. And I think that probably isn't super favorable for McCaffrey. I think for me, the more intriguing pieces in this game are on Carolina's wide receiver side. DJ Moore standing out in particular, Curtis Samuel as well. Both these guys, correlate well with Kyle Allen, who I know won't be in there, but we don't have any regular season correlation data with Will Grier. So if we kind of, assume that these guys' correlation with Carolina quarterback will hold pretty similar. You figure that's a good spot, for one of these guys. Indiana's actually got a pretty porous, secondary, have been allowing top 6 efficiency to opposing receivers in terms of fantasy points per target, fantasy points per air yard, catch rate, stuff like that. So I think it's pretty good spot for me to move off of CMC and towards Carolina receivers, especially in a tournament build where I think there's a good opportunity to kind of catch a lot of people on CMC at $10,000, and I think there's a little more risk there than there has been in previous weeks.
Will Greer is 4,300 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, stack him up with some of those receivers. Marlon Mack, I think, is a pretty good run back option. Carolina just so atrocious defending running backs on the ground. I think there's a little bit to like here running kind of a small stack Carolina receivers, Marlon Mack, Indy.
Right, and based on the ownership, I mean, we have Mack at 5% currently. We have Moore and Samuel at 7% and 6%. We got Olsen at 4%. I definitely think this looked. I mean, for the stack size, salary wise, this game has a 47 total. It's being played in a dome. It's not, the weather is not going to matter. Carolina still has a 20-point total. That's nearly 3 touchdowns. So, as long as McCaffrey doesn't siphon off as much of the production as he may normally do, at this ownership, I don't see a reason. I know the Colts want to run the ball. I know that the most probable outcome is that the clock is running, that they're going to eat a lot of it. But we always have to think in terms of, Carolina gets the ball first and scores immediately, and then the game script kind of flips, or there's a turnover or something like that. Or Marlon Mack scores 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and then basically the Panthers are throwing the ball the rest of the game. So based on the salaries, I mean, $6,900, $4,500, a $4,300 quarterback, a $6,200 running back. I mean, you're getting under $20K for a full 3+1 at this ownership with no one over 10%. They all correlate. You're telling me that correlates, Stu. So I think this is a very good vomit stack candidate for a slate, especially when the Panthers are out of it. And I know in the last game they played McCaffrey like it didn't matter, but maybe this is the game where maybe in the fourth quarter you do see a Bonafont, and maybe you don't see McCaffrey playing every snap. Yeah,
I wonder if they are going to want to be in kind of evaluation mode and give Will Grier kind of the keys to the car for better or worse, to see if he can actually drive it or if it's a total train crash. I think an interesting spot. I think Carolina receivers project well, good correlation. I think I'm interested in this game for the pieces other than McCaffrey, which is something we rarely talk about when talking about Carolina.
Well, the next game is the Saints at the Titans. The Saints with a 26.5 implied total. The Titans with a 24 implied total. This is one of the higher total games on the slate. We have a bunch of high total games on this slate. From the Titans' perspective, obviously Tannehill has been playing well. A.J. Brown has turned into a true number 1 wide receiver, although he's 7,000 on DraftKings. And then the Saints are the Saints. I mean, pretty much it's Michael Thomas, it's Alvin Kamara, it's Drew Brees. Maybe you throw in some Jared Cook. But I still make the case every slate that he's on, and he's under 10K, is Michael Thomas the most underpriced player on the whole slate?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of the guy I'm focusing on. And I don't know, from a kind of game stacking standpoint, you talked about how many pretty good total games there are on the slate, and this is one of the higher ones, but it's also one that's just extremely priced up. I mean, Titans as a team have really been priced up in the last couple of weeks. And I mean, I don't know, too. I know, Vegas odds are very efficient, but these are 2 pretty good defenses. Tough matchups for kind of all passing pieces, passing and receiving pieces. Just given kind of the elevated price of the game as a whole, just the quality of the defenses and kind of limiting effectiveness through the air, and the fact that there's a decent amount of just kind of similarly totaled games that are a lot cheaper. It is a game I'm not super interested in building around a ton. I think, I might want to grab a couple one-off pieces and work those into other stacks more so than I'm inclined to, build, I guess, around the game. Thomas is kind of the guy I would key on as far as just grabbing that one-off piece. I think Kamara, people have been kind of underwhelmed with his production near the goal line, in scoring, but I think he's a decent kind of pivot off of Thomas. You figure it's been going lately where Thomas has been getting a lot, of kind of scoring production, and Kamara's been getting none of it. But you do set yourself up nicely if you kind of build with Kamara, on the chance that Thomas doesn't get any of that production. I don't know. I think it though is for me, I'd prefer to just kind of stick chalk Thomas with a more contrarian stack than try to really load up this game with expensive pieces that I think probably will be pretty highly owned to begin with. So I don't know. That's kind of how I'm thinking about this game. What about you?
Well, I think Michael Thomas will be highly owned. I think AJ Brown is going to get some ownership. But you're right. Like just the stack price is so insane. I mean, they could score 50 points, but the production could go a ton of different places. Ted Ginn could have some long touchdown. But
Taysom Hill, just has
right.
been...
Taysom Hill just steals touchdowns left and right. Who knows? But I think with people jumping off of Kamara and his lack of touchdowns, I mean, currently he's projected at 8% and he's 7,500. You tell us that like 6 weeks ago, and he's 30% owned at this price. So with a 26-point total on the Saints side, so I know that you go through your projection model, you look at the recent form, and you do all the analysis, all the formulas, but maybe this is a game Kamara scores 3 touchdowns and he's 8% owned. But I would agree with you that if I do that, it probably won't be with Kamara and Thomas together in a line. Yeah,
they have slightly negative correlation, so it's not that has come down. I think in 2018 they actually correlated pretty well together, but it just hasn't been the case this year. And I think I'm kind of willing to trust that 2019 form a little more and pick one but not both kind of thing.
Okay, next game. We go from enticing games to kind of, okay, this game exists. Giants, Redskins. Giants with a 20 implied total. Redskins with a 21.5 implied total. The Redskins are favored in this game. Most of the Giants are healthy. I mean, we got Shepard, we got Slayton, Tate. I mean, yes, their tight ends aren't anything to sneeze at. But I mean, I think the most appealing options in this game are probably the running backs. And it's going to be weird of me to say, I think the more appealing option in running back at 5,000 is Adrian Peterson. Are you going to tell me I'm crazy?
I don't know. I kind of disagree with you. I think I'm more interested in the receivers in this game. These are like the 2 worst defenses against receivers, and it's a low total game. But I actually think there's a lot of intrigue for me in.
There's intrigue, but you can tell me where this goes. Because look, I mentioned the Giants receivers, and then you have like Steven Sims, McLaurin, Harmon. Like any of these guys can get there. I agree with you. Yes, maybe there's a lot of passing and the 3 touchdowns each side, but like, how do I stack this? How do I do this without like committing like half my liners? Because I need to like which receivers am I choosing? Yeah,
well, I think the Giants receiving core is significantly more confusing. I mean, they have 3 viable receivers. Rhett Ellison's coming back, which he's not like, a total game plan shifter, but he's just yet another person in there. But I don't know. I think the Washington side is pretty straightforward. I mean, McLaurin is the guy. He, has just been getting so much of Washington's looks. And I think, Steven Sims has kind of factored in as kind of the near, shorter yardage receiver. I don't know. I mean, we talked about Greer at 4,300, who's like a complete unknown. Haskins, I think, has been playing better, and he's priced marginally higher than Greer. Okay. But
he's not unknown. I'd rather bet on the unknown than the known, right? At this point.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, there's a case.
I get it. I think sure. if I were to play Haskins, which I don't think I am. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, obviously the single stack with McLaurin or something like that. I get it. And then what? I play Barkley on the other side, and Barkley's expensive, and he's perfectly fine play. But I mean, I think in terms of maybe taking a shot on one of the Giants receivers and then playing Adrian Peterson, because apparently the Redskins just have no problem just giving him if he's going to get 20 touches at 5,000 against, and as a favored home team, remember talking about running back performance against the Giants defense with 3 touchdowns, they have a 3 touchdown implied total. It's quite possible that Peterson has all 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's in play. I think both these teams are really, really attackable on the outside, and that's kind of how I prefer to try to get there. But I mean, Peterson's cheap. No Darius Geis in there. I don't think it's a terrible idea by any stretch.
What do you think of Steven Sims at 4,000? Do you think he's cash viable?
No, not cash viable, but I think he's got. I mean, the thing about the Washington receivers, they correlate really nicely with Haskins. Like, I think it's a potential.
Well, obviously, he's the quarterback. Why wouldn't they?
Well, I think they have massive correlations. I mean, Sims is 0.71 correlation with Haskins, McLaurin 0.66. I mean, I think those are on the high side. I mean, we have receivers that actually do negatively correlate with their quarterbacks. It's
how is that possible? Can you explain the math on that one?
Yeah, sure.
How can you negatively correlate with the guy that throws you the ball?
Well, the idea being that when a quarterback reaches a game kind of in excess of their central performance level.
Oh, so we're talking about ceilings then. Like when they hit their ceiling.
Sure. Yeah.
With another receiver ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way we are looking at correlation is how, players' performances relate to one another relative to each of those players' norms. So like, yes, a 5-yard pass to like one guy I think we talked about on Twitter a little bit who had negative correlation with quarterback was Cole Beasley and Josh Allen. And, Josh Allen is reaching his ceiling games when he is, running the ball in the red zone and, effectively passing the ball downfield, moving like large yardage at a time. Cole Beasley excels when he's getting, 10 targets, all 10 yards or less. And I do think we sometimes see negative correlation between receivers like reaching their ceiling games and quarterbacks failing to reach their ceiling games or maybe even reaching a floor, like with some of these short yardage receivers, like these short, Tyler Boyd-esque receptions are disproportionately helpful to receivers than they are to quarterbacks. Like a 2-yard catch does really nothing for a quarterback, does nothing to help move them, towards the upper end of their performance scale. But an accumulation of many, short receptions, none of which go for touchdowns, for some of these cheap receivers does help move, them towards their ceiling. So
that's the main reason. I agree with you. I kind of wanted to make you explain it, but that's the main reason why when I double stack those possession receivers, I never single stack with the quarterback. I need to get the yardage guy with him. So like the Danny Amendola types, even though, he had a 100-yard game or whatever, like I'm more likely to like not single stack him. I'm like, I'll play Galladay with him. So like these, like the Steven Sims, like I wouldn't do Haskins Sims. I would do Haskins Sims McLaurin. I would do like Beasley. You do John Brown with John Brown and Josh Allen, but like I wouldn't do a Brown Beasley stack. I do a Brown, an Allen Brown stack, but I wouldn't do the single stack with those possession receivers.
For sure. Or if you like really like the receiver, it's perfectly fine to play receivers and not pair them with their quarterback, right? Like you could run, I think like a very successful lineup last week was probably not David Blau running Amendola on an island and then, going on the Tampa Bay
I think
side
that's an outlier for him though.
For Amendola or Blau?
For Amendola.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think he probably benefited a lot from Marvin Jones being out, which was, an outlier kind of spot that he was in, and that I don't think we've seen a whole lot of kind of Amendola, Sands, Jones games. But anyway, so that's kind of the thought process. Typically these, downfield receivers, a guy like McLaurin that can create yards after the catch, which are kind of like equally beneficial to run quarterback and receiver. These are your guys that typically correlate well with quarterbacks and I think make for the most intriguing, stack options. Anyway, so it's a good discussion.
It's a good explanation. People should know because then they could apply it to other teams and other slates. And even if you're not on the show, even the show doesn't exist, it's a good learning process.
Yep.
So let's go on to the next game, which I think is going to be fairly popular on this slate. It's Jacksonville at Atlanta. Jaguars with a 19.5 implied total currently, and the Falcons with a 27 implied total. I think pieces of this game that are going to be popular, we're going to see some ownership on Freeman. I mean, both these defenses are not anything to write home about. They're playing indoors in Atlanta. Fournette's still going to get ownership with his opportunity at 7,200. And then in the passing game, I mean, I think we're going to see, Conley. He was only priced up to 4,300 on DraftKings. I think Keelan Cole is an option at 3,600. And then you got like Julio Jones. He got 19 targets last week without Ridley in that offense at 8,000. And then we got like Hooper at 4,400, which seems to be a bit underpriced for what he should be. I mean, I know he was hurt, but now he's coming back to like the target share. Where did it go? Because Sanu's not there anymore and Ridley's not there anymore. So I think there's obvious, Ryan, Hooper, Free. I mean, you could even stack Ryan with Freeman because he's a pass catching running back. You got Jones, and then you got cheap wide receivers on the Jaguars, and you even have a pass catching running back for the Jaguars. Overall, do you think that this game is going to be over-owned for its expectation, or do you think that the pricing is it should be this efficient? It should be this owned.
I mean, we're looking at more or less the same total and spread as that Carolina game, and I think the ownership is going to be way higher on this one. The prices are way higher. It's an interesting exercise of recent response to recency. Like Julio went absolutely nuts last week. Conley kind of got in there late. Westbrook did nothing, kind of thing. And I'm actually interested in the pieces that didn't perform super well last week. One of whom you touched on was Hooper. I mean, the price is way down, not way down, but it's down for him. Historically, he's had really strong negative correlation with Ridley because, they kind of, their ceilings are achieved by kind of the same trait and their ability to get looks in the red zone. And with Ridley gone, I expect Hooper to, I think, benefit in a big way from that absence. Julio, I imagine in response, he went nuts last week. And I think, the logic that him excelling with Ridley gone should carry through. But if it is going to be super popular, I'm interested in, I think, going kind of different routes in this game. Hooper, Ryan really interests me. And, one guy, with the whole Conley, and I think Dede was in a perfectly good spot last week, just had maybe some run bad. A guy coming back, DJ Chark, I think is the guy on the Jacksonville side that I really want to own. Atlanta.
Is he going to play, or is he just questionable?
I believe so. I thought I saw reports that he was practicing, had been in practice this week.
Okay, so we'll need to. That's a big thing for these receivers because, if Chark's in, because they priced Conley and Westbrook up a little. Westbrook at 5,100 on DraftKings, 4,300 for Conley. It takes Keelan Cole away as a potential upside play at 3,600. But Chark at 6,300 becomes the underpriced one out of the bunch if he's able to fully play. Yes, if he can play all the snaps, if he could play 80+% of the snaps, I agree with you. But this may be the type of thing that we need to look Saturday or even Sunday morning on whether or not he's in. And yes, I would agree with you that I'd be much more inclined to play Chark than any of the other guys. But if Chark's not in, if this game's going to go back and forth in a dome, I still think all these Jacksonville receivers are playable.
Yeah, I think so. So the report on Chark is he has been in practice this week and is expected to play. So, I think probably Keelan Cole is the guy who would, be most hurt by the present, the return of Chark. Probably just wouldn't really be on the field hardly at all. But yeah, I think even Conley and Westbrook, I think, stand to really be hurt by the presence of Chark. He's been pretty solid with Minshew, and I think the Atlanta passing attack correlates pretty well with the other, passing on the other side or receiving on the other side. So I think probably I'd be looking at this from a build around Atlanta pass game and then try to run back with Shark in particular. Like I really like, and I think he's been a real solid receiver this year. And just coming back from injury, I do wonder, if people might be a little hesitant to click on him and might be more inclined to see 2 touchdown Conley at a minimum price hike. I think there's maybe some good opportunity for Shark to come in at under-owned.
And Shark is the type of receiver that you could single stack with Minshew, and you could even play like a 2+2 stack where you're doing Minshew, Shark, and then running it back with both Freeman and Hooper.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting the 2 cheap instead of Jones. You're getting the 2 cheaper guys, but you're getting Freeman like in the game script where the Jags have to pass. Freeman gets more looks. Maybe Freeman gets a couple of PPR, 5 catches, 1 touchdown, maybe 100-yard rushing game against the Jacksonville defense, and Hooper gets 5 for 60 and a touchdown, and that he pays off for at 17 points for his salary at $4,400, and you just hope that Julio Jones just has a nice average 20-point game, and it's not going to matter.
Which it's not like he sometimes can disappear in games. I like the sound of that. Jacksonville, we know we really want to attack on the ground, and Freeman I think does have a pass catching floor that is pretty intriguing. So I like the sound of that build for sure.
Well, going on to the next game, which should seem like a game that we should be targeting at their total, which is, it's moving up to 49.5, but I'm not even sure how you do it because there's always the case with the Ravens. Ravens 29.75 implied total, taking their show on the road to Cleveland to face the Browns with a 19.75 total. The Ravens are easy. It's Lamar Jackson, and how the hell do you stack that? As usual. And then you got Cleveland, where apparently they don't care about the receivers. Last week they didn't seem to care about the receivers anymore. But you have to assume as a 10-point home underdog that they're going to have to pass. It's not going to be the Nick Chubb show and the Kareem Hunt show. What's the stack in this game? Naked Lamar with like one of Jarvis or Odell Beckham? I just look at it's the weirdest types of games to stack because if I stack Mayfield, the best run back is the opposite quarterback. And then if I stack Jackson, it's like the best option is to not put him with anyone. So how do you attack this game?
Yeah, just a combination of how Jackson gets it done with so much, effectiveness from his legs and just how good the Baltimore defense is. I think they're a team that sets up pretty well for just kind of an onslaught build. Baltimore's defense is really good. Second matchup between these two teams where, I think, Baltimore is going to do their due diligence on scouting and kind of get that game plan tightened up.
You're saying onslaught, you're saying Jackson, Ingram, Brown, Andrews, just take them all.
I would just say, I guess what I'm saying is just not attempting to run back with any Cleveland guys. So, either just going Jackson naked or one guy I like with Jackson is Mark Andrews. He has kind of multi-touchdown upside that he's, sometimes able to get. And Cleveland's actually really bad against tight end. They're probably right behind Arizona in terms of just best tight end matchups. And
but there's no flow chart for that, though.
It's not.
I feel bad that there's no flow chart for the Browns. Only Arizona gets the flow chart. Why can't we have multiple flow charts?
I guess we could. Cleveland's just efficiency against tight ends is really bad. They're allowing behind Arizona second most fantasy points per tight end target and tight end air yard. And Andrews I think has a pretty nice kind of multi-touchdown ceiling that I think few other tight ends have with reasonable confidence. I guess we saw Ricky Seals-Jones, flow chart his way into 2 touchdowns last week, but for the most part, there's only a short stack of tight ends who I think have legit multi-touchdown possibility within their game script, within kind of their range of outcomes. One of those, George Kittle's on the Saturday slate. I think Austin Hooper has a unlikely, probability towards kind of that path, but I think it's within his range of outcomes. But I think Mark Andrews, actually has kind of a pretty nice multi-touchdown possibility. Correlates really well with Jackson historically. I think that's probably the extent I would go with the Baltimore stack. Or Marquise Brown, I think probably one of Brown or Andrews. But I don't know, just Brown's time on his kind of low snap count, which I think has been pretty well documented this year. I don't know, it's still always a bit concerning. But yeah, that's how I would kind of look at the Baltimore side. And I mean, Cleveland just seems like such a mess right now. I'm really having a hard time having a lot of faith in that offense against this really good Baltimore defense.
Well, talking about good teams, let's go to the game with the two worst teams. Cincinnati at Miami. The Bengals with a 23.25 implied total currently. Miami with a 22.25. So it's nearly a pick'em game. Typically, both of these teams never have, these high totals for – typically they're under 20 each because they're facing a team that's better than them. Someone has to win this game. I guess it could be a tie after overtime. It's picking up a good amount of ownership because a lot of these pieces are cheap, but a lot of them aren't really. So, it's going to be, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Andy Dalton. It's going to be Joe Mixon, who is quietly just given 30 touches a game regardless, even if they're down by 400 points. You got Laird and Gaskin. You got, of course, our Laird and Savior there. Both these defenses are horrible. So, we're not dealing with the offenses are not skillful, but the defenses are even less skillful. Is it worth it to pay $6,800 on DraftKings for Devontae Parker or $5,800 for Tyler Boyd at nearly around 20% ownership? Because it's not like these are vomit stacks, because these prices are like the quarterbacks aren't even that cheap. Dalton's $5,200, Fitzpatrick's $6,000. Typically this would be a vomit stack candidate. I'd be all over this game, but the main two wide receivers are not I could get DJ Chark for these prices. I get Devontae Parker is I could get Keenan Allen for $500 less. So is this a game as stackable as what people seem to think it is? Or do you think that it's actually more so and we should be looking at guys like Alex Erickson and Albert Wilson, Mike Gesicki, some of the other pieces and go that way?
Yeah, it's a good point in regards to the price. Particularly on Parker. I think, historically this is a kind of a stackable, Miami is a stackable team. Fitz and Parker have an insane 79% correlation. But yeah, the prices are getting up there. And I do think there are some intriguing pieces. I do think kind of the Cincinnati side's a little more just efficiently or just a kind of at better price points. I think Miami is just as good a defensive attack as Cincinnati. And I think, Dalton obviously has less upside than Fitzpatrick in regards to his rushing and passing as well. But yeah, I do think a guy like Alex Erickson pairs pretty nicely with Dalton and kind of would be a way to get some cheap, some cheap ownership in this game. He's being projected for 5% ownership.
A lot of this game is being projected for Mixon 17%. I'm not saying that they're bad plays. I'm just I look at that Carolina Colts game and I'm looking at the Carolina, DJ Moore is $100 more than Devontae Parker and a fourth of the ownership. What makes that a fit? Is it 4 times more likely that Parker hits a ceiling than Moore does? I don't think so. If the ownership was flipped, I'd be saying the opposite thing. So to me in this game, I feel like maybe I take a bunch of Joe Mixon and call it a day.
Yeah. But at 17, that still sounds like he is.
But for a running back in that range, that isn't absurd or anything.
Gotcha.
Because remember, if I'm building a vomit stack, if I'm playing 5% don't stack, I don't care. Running backs are a much more narrow range than any other position. I don't mind loading up on chalk running backs if I have a 2% owned receiver and a 2% owned quarterback.
Yeah. What are y'all's ownership projections for Fitzpatrick and Parker?
Quarterback ownership is all spread out.
Okay.
9 for Dalton, 7 for Fitzpatrick, which for quarterbacks is actually above average.
Okay, yeah. I guess more so for Parker.
Parker's at 20.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
But he's 6,800. It's not to me. He's efficiently priced.
Yeah, per dollar, I don't think Parker is a super great value by any stretch of the imagination. I think you're really just playing him for correlation properties with his quarterback and the other side. But it does feel like there might be equally good, probably better kind of medium projectable options, and probably just as good, maybe not quite as good kind of correlation plays as Parker, but at lower ownership, higher, just better value, could be a route to go. I do think from cash game perspective, I really am intrigued by Dalton. I think he's at a really low price and just has a great matchup. So I think he's an interesting play there for cash purposes. John Ross, has, big play ability. He just hasn't really been used the same way he was early in the season since returning from injury, and does feel a little thin to try to get too much out of that. I can't really. There's no evidence that would suggest that his playing time is going to increase this week compared to the last 2 weeks. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, I think maybe more of an interesting game for cash purposes than tournament, just given kind of the elevated price points.
Okay, let's go to the next game, which should be a quick one, I believe. Pittsburgh, Jets, Steelers with a 20 implied total, Jets with a 17 implied total. In your model, Stu, how much weight do you put on revenge?
About 0.
So Le'Veon Bell doesn't get an increase.
Might be rounding, but no.
Le'Veon Bell doesn't get an increase. Based on, I use Cardi's Blitz based on his projections. In this game, Bell is the best point per dollar play. Like, not on the slate. I'm just talking about in this game.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And no one, it's like Bell and Connor, and then it's a 37 implied total with a Steelers team that is not really looking to shoot out. They're looking to make the playoffs with Duck Hodges at the quarterback, and a Jets defense that typically stops the run more than the pass. It's very hard to figure that this game turns into a shootout. It's a 37 implied total. I'm assuming there's correlation, and there's obviously correlations, but what are the chances of any of these guys hitting a ceiling in this game?
Yeah, pretty low. I don't know. I haven't looked closely at everyone in the game, but I would guess Bell is, point per dollar projecting the best for us. And I don't know, he's not projecting, I guess, terribly from a median standpoint, but the guy has just shown, no extra gear this year. Really the only play I'm interested in this game is Pittsburgh defense. I think other than that, there's really not too much to like. The Jets, we typically want to attack on the outside with receiver, but just those Pittsburgh
you can
receivers.
Take a shot. If you want to take a shot on Johnson or Washington, but to me, those are one-off plays that you throw in. They're 1%, 2% owned type of things, and hope for a 90-yard touchdown. And I think that's perfectly fine. And but I don't see stacking. I don't see stacking a quarterback with either of them.
Yeah, no, maybe a Deontay Johnson. Pittsburgh D double dip.
A double dip! You're doing the double
dip. But yeah, no, I have actually no notes on this game other than that both these defenses are good. Pittsburgh DST is actually projecting pretty favorably points per dollar for us. So I don't know. I think paying up at defense is always a bit contrarian, especially when it's with a team other than the Patriots. So if you can get a defensive touchdown out of Pittsburgh, that could be a decent spot there, but other than that, not much.
Okay, let's go now to a more popular game. The Raiders, Chargers, Oakland, 19.25 implied total. Chargers, 26.25 implied total, which they're at home, but that's barely home field advantage there. I admit there may be more Raiders fans than Chargers fans at that game. Yeah. We have two of the highest projected owned players in this game, and I would assume they're correlated with each other. on opposite sides of the game, and that one is DeAndre Washington with Jacobs not in. The DraftKings has not priced him up. He's 4,000. He's going to get Jacobs' workload. There seems to be no reason why he shouldn't be popular. And then on the other side, correlated with the run game of one team is the pass game of the other. And Keenan Allen getting double-digit targets at 6,300. He figures to be one of, if not the most popular wide receivers, outside of maybe Michael Thomas, the popular wide receivers on this slate. Is there any reason not to, outside of those two, like I could see if you're going to play a GPP lineup and you're playing very contrarian and go, well, I'll just jam in Washington and Allen as a secondary correlation. I think that's fine with a 1% own type of stack, contrarian stack. But if you're not going to do that, is there a way to stack this game where either you're getting leverage, like on the Chargers, I could see like playing Rivers and Mike Williams and not playing Keenan Allen and then playing DeAndre Washington as the run back, like would make sense. But is there a way to do this where you still play both those two guys and still end up being different somehow?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, both those two guys, I think, excellent cash plays. Keenan's projecting as our best per dollar receiver. So I think in play in a huge way there in cash. I think both of them also just make a lot of sense as kind of not a piece of a primary stack, but just a nice little like secondary kind of running back wide receiver stack within another stack from a different game. I think the tight ends are interesting. Both teams are really attackable at tight end, allowing top six efficiency to opposing tight end. Los Angeles maybe a little worse against tight end than Oakland, but it's tough. So like the matchups would appear to be good, but there is, I think, some just factors working against each tight end that are a little tough. Hunter Renfrow, I think, is supposed to return for Oakland, and I think there's been pretty good coverage of just his negative correlation with Darren Waller. The presence of Hunter Renfrow, for whatever reason, seems to really work against Darren Waller. And, if you buy, we actually have a decent amount of data points on that, such that I don't think it's unreasonable to buy into that. And that would figure not bode well for Darren Waller. And then Hunter Henry, just a crowded Los Angeles offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And to me, like Keenan Allen seems to be the most consistent used piece in that offense. Hunter Henry has, he in his kind of initial return from injury was really heavily utilized, but it does seem like his targets have been a little more up and down as of late. I think those are interesting ways to get off of Keenan Allen and DeAndre Washington. However, I think those two chalky plays are actually pretty good chalk in my opinion.
What do you think of the correlation or negative correlation? What do you think between them of playing Washington and someone like Gordon or Eckler together?
I don't have any notes in front of me in regards to, and Washington's a tough guy to capture correlation on because like our data will show his historic correlation with different pieces. But we really only have a sample of one in terms of, his correlation as the role that he's going to be in. So
can you just use the Raiders running back in general and go like the run that just as long as I think it's more the fact of it's not even the Raiders, just how much is Gordon or Eckler correlative to the opponent's running back regardless of the matchup? Because I think in terms of Gordon and Eckler are both like pass catching running backs. We have here at RG Gordon at 16% projected ownership at 5,600. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Eckler 6,100 will have less, but they both have ceilings. Like, which do you think the ceilings correlate to? Like, Washington doesn't have to smash. Like, Washington doesn't have to get like 20 plus points at 4K. But if he gets 15, if Washington gets a touchdown, maybe 4 catches, 80 yards, that type of game, like, and you have to use another running back slot in addition to him. I'm just trying to figure out whether or not, if you wanted to pivot off of a chalky Keenan Allen and still wanted to have correlation, would Gordon or Eckler be it?
Yeah, so the data would suggest no. In 2019, Melvin Gordon's had a pretty bad or pretty negative. I'm not necessarily saying correlation is good or bad, but for the purposes that we're talking about, negative correlation would be bad. Has negative 51% correlation with opposing running backs opposing the Chargers. Austin Eckler, negative 32%. So the data would suggest that in games where either of those guys excel, I don't want to introduce causation here, but there's correlation that would suggest that it's more likely for opposing running backs to fail in games when either of those guys succeed. Eckler to less of an extent than Gordon, but both of them. And I'm looking also at Josh Jacobs' correlation with opposing running backs, and obviously DeAndre Washington is not Josh Jacobs, but for the reasons we talked about in regards to DeAndre Washington sample size. So Josh Jacobs has a negative 18% correlation with opposing running backs that oppose Oakland. So the data would suggest not a great game to shoot for kind of that cross running back correlation. But it's
it could happen. You never know.
Yeah, right.
It's a lower probability. That's a better way of putting it.
Exactly. Perfect. Because correlation is just a pattern, not a
not binary.
Law.
Not yes or no. Right.
For sure. Yeah. It's not like a law of causation. It's a pattern of correlation.
Multiply. Can we do synonyms? Can I look up synonyms? Can we do that? Let's go to the next game, which is probably a flyover game. Detroit, Denver, Lions with a 15.5 implied total, the lowest on the slate. Broncos with a 22 implied total. What do you do in this game? Because this, it's Bob and Stacks. Look, I could pair what I still look at this and I go, I guess you could play Cortland Sutton for a ceiling. I guess you could play Golladay for a ceiling. I guess you could take a shot on Amendola for a PPR type of game. I guess you could take a shot on Lindsey or Freeman, depending on how the carries, the snaps balance out there. But is there anything to do in this game?
Yeah, not really. I mean, Philip Lindsay's the one guy I would maybe call to attention. Just Detroit has been really attackable at running backs, catching the ball out of the backfield. And I think Philip Lindsay is probably the Denver running back that profiles the best there. But I mean, there was a brief period where we were getting Lindsay kind of near bell cow work, but he, I believe, has fallen kind of back to a pretty substantial committee. But Detroit is really attackable with running backs, out of the backfield. I think I noted their kind of allowance to Tampa Bay running backs last week, which aren't a particularly, catch heavy committee, and 6 targets, 4 catches, 62 yards. Detroit has really had a hard time stopping running backs catching the ball out of the backfield. But with as 7-point favorites, I'm just not sure that there's going to be too much opportunity for Lindsay to get involved in a big way in the passing game. So not too much to like here.
Next game, there's maybe a lot to like. It's going to be popular. Arizona, Seattle. Cardinals with a 20.75 implied total currently. Seattle with what looks like the highest total in the slate, 30.25. Russell Wilson fares to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate on DraftKings at 7,000. Both Lockett and Metcalf stand to figure double-digit ownership on DraftKings. And Carson has been priced up to 8,500, but he's still going to carry 10 to 15% ownership here. We have Drake coming off a 4-touchdown game on the other side. And then we also have the wide receivers on the Cardinals, Fitzgerald, Kirk, and then the Birds, the Coopers, the Isabellas. They typically put out a lot of wide receivers there. Do you think that – I think that this is a very appealing game environment. I would agree with the ownership of that the game environment's good. Do you think that these the outcomes for individuals in this game could tilt dramatically in different directions enough where it may be better to single stack this game and not double stack?
Yes. I mean, I think with Seattle, they have been, I think the way you would handle this game on the Seattle side really depends heavily on how you expect it to go. I mean, Seattle, when up big, is going to run the ball. So I think that there's kind of just two, scenarios I want to kind of branch off of. And there's the Seattle, covering the spread, dominating Arizona. And I think that is a scenario where I'm probably going to, want to be skinnier with the stacks. Like I think going just straight Carson and then running the Arizona receiving side of, Kyler and Kirk is probably the preferred approach I would take there. I think, like you said, Russ is, I think, going to be pretty popular. And I don't know. I think Russ has a legit floor. Like when Seattle gets up big, I think Carroll is pretty happy to just run the ball a bunch. And, I think there's a decent chance that could happen. So there's kind of that game script, which I think really lends itself towards just running like Carson and then, a short stack on the other side. Because
I'm looking at it from a perspective of price. Mm-hmm. Like I could see, obviously, Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf would be like the passing stack. Or you could even throw in Hollister because of the flow chart, right?
Yeah.
200, you got to do that. Arizona, the original flow chart. And the Browns are sitting there going, hey, what about our flow chart?
Yeah.
But I could, at these prices, Lockett is 7,600, Metcalf is 5,900. Like Lockett needs a 100-yard kind of 2-touchdown type of game to pay off for GPP value, which to me takes off from Metcalf, who's almost 6K by himself. And Kirk is 5,600. So like I look at this from a perspective of, if I'm going to play Wilson with both Lockett and Metcalf, like I need everything. I need Carson to pretty much die and get none of the production. So that's why, like, I'm more inclined if I'm going to, because they're all high owned. So like by playing Wilson with the two wide receivers, I'm not gaining. I'm like, the differentiation isn't even there. So I need to get that right and still have to get the rest of my lineup right. So I think I'm more inclined to, if I'm going to play a stack of Seattle, do just Wilson to Lockett, hope Lockett gets 45 points, or do Wilson to Metcalf and hope Lockett's sitting there with 2 catches for 12 yards and Metcalf has 3 touchdowns, and then running it back with just one of Kirk or one of Fitzgerald or even Demir Bird or something, or doing the same with the Murray, just doing Murray to Kirk, not like with 2 wide receivers, and just hope that all the production tilts towards one wide receiver. So I'm not stuck there with high-owned pieces and one of them with 9 points. And it's like I didn't gain anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf is a pretty pricey and likely to be high-owned. And we talked about earlier in the year how Lockett and Metcalf actually correlated pretty well together. And that's tapered off in the second half of the season to the point where Lockett's got super high correlation with Wilson, but really not good correlation with other receiving pieces in Seattle. And I think actually the in conjunction with just the excellent tight end matchup and the way that the two guys are correlating in the receiving game well together, I think actually the preferred Seattle double stack for me would be Wilson, Hollister, Metcalf, Christian Kirk on the other side. Those guys, Hollister and Metcalf, have actually shown really good correlation with each other. 59% positive is like a really high correlation between 2 receiving pieces. And then Hollister and Wilson and Hollister and Metcalf alone have actually correlated really well together. Wilson, Hollister, 64%, Wilson, Metcalf, 47%. And both Hollister and Metcalf actually correlate well with receiving options on the other side. 40% positive correlation for Metcalf, 50% positive correlation for Hollister. So for me, if I am going to try to double stack this game, really the correlation on and really all assets, all pieces that is really coming together is actually Wilson, Metcalf, Hollister, Arizona receiver, probably Christian Kirk. Just given Larry Fitzgerald's kind of, talk about dying on the field, like that. That's kind of how if I am really going to stack up the Seattle side, total just fade of Wilson and Carson in any lineup just makes really no sense given kind of how this team operates. And I don't think that, that's completely earth-shattering news, but if I am going to double stack, I think avoiding Lockett and going with the two cheaper kind of secondary and tertiary pieces of Hollister and Metcalf is probably the way I would want to go.
The last game on the slate is the one that's going to decide who wins the worst division in the history of NFL football, the NFC East. I'm not even sure what their records are, but isn't like the division winner is going to have a losing record. I mean, it's Dallas, Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, I think there's routes to getting to 500 or maybe one game over. They're both sitting at 500. So
okay, so someone's going to have a winning record. Dallas has a 24 implied total. The Eagles have a 22.5 implied total. We got an Eagles passing attack that has like no one. I don't know. It's Greg Ward and Ertz and Goddard and Arcega-Whiteside sitting there doing nothing. We got running backs that Miles Sanders, Ezekiel Elliott. We got quarterbacks that should be good but may not be. I mean, if you look on paper, you go Carson Wentz versus Dak Prescott. You think this is a good matchup, but maybe not this season as much. What do you see in this game? Because I view this game as stackable in a single to me, if I'm going to stack Dallas, it's going to be with just one of Gallup or Cooper and not both of them with Prescott. And I'm much more inclined to look at the Eagles side and play like Wentz, Sanders, Ertz, some type of combination like that and run it back with Zeke. Because it's not like this total is low. It's 46.5. So like it's going to be owned somewhat. Like these are not like single digit owned pieces, but they're not like as owned as the rest of the slate. I can obviously see a case where this game is 10-6 and like it doesn't like this ends up being a dud. But I think that the pricing in this game leads it to being stackable.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm mostly looking at this game just for Zeke. I think Philadelphia started the season as a pretty good run defense and have just really fallen off and actually been a pretty bad run defense. In the first 2 months of the season, September and October, they were allowing, kind of around league average per rush attempt efficiency. In November and December, they're allowing the fourth most adjusted fantasy points per rush attempt to opposing running backs. So I'm actually looking at this game more like Zeke to me is the most intriguing piece. I don't know. You did touch on Ertz, who I think is in a good spot. I mean, like you said, Philadelphia's just got no one, not no one to catch balls, but they're kind of larger target share pieces are all on injured reserves or going to be inactive for this game. So Ertz, I think, is really compelling. It sounds like I'm a little less interested in this game than you are, but I just see good quarterback. I mean, on paper, if you told me Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott were in a game, you'd be like, oh, two good quarterbacks, 2% and 3% though. Yeah,
and Dak has rushing upside when he does, if he can run. I mean, like I know that it maybe is a finger problem. I mean, there are a lot of question marks in this game. I'm not saying like I'm jumping right in, but if we just take out any type of recency bias and looked at these quarterbacks and looked at the game and go, well, Philadelphia doesn't really have any receivers, but Wentz has to throw the ball to someone. And then you take a look at the Zeke we've seen Zeke at 9K in the past. We've seen Amari Cooper at 8K and Gallup at 7K. And I go, if you take out the recent form that these teams have been playing poorly, like there's a case where they just both decide to wake up in a game that is most likely going to decide who makes the playoffs. Why not just use the kind of serendipitous kind of anything butterfly effect type of type of thing going. Maybe these two teams end up playing well, and this ends up being a 38-21 type of game or something, or some 60-plus point total.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the Dallas side's a little more intriguing, I guess, from a correlation standpoint. Dak has correlated well with those receivers, although if memory serves, Gallup and Cooper in particular don't really correlate well with one another. But I do think it's probably an opportunity to maybe pick one of those guys that you like. Don't really have much of an opinion on, median projection, which one projects better.
Gallup's 1,200 cheaper. So like I'm of the type, if you're going to play a one-off, if you're not stacking and you have both of them,
yeah,
like I would just like throw them in your pool, whichever one fits.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Prescott and Gallup have correlated really well so far this year, positive 67%. Amari, not that far behind, but still at 49% correlation with Prescott is a little, seems like there's a little less kind of correlation there between those two. Let's see. I'm pulling up Amari and Gallup. Oh, they've actually correlated well together, positive 58%. So, I don't know. Maybe actually is a decent spot to run them together.
I convinced you, maybe. No, I think I'm going to run them together anyway. But I mean, I get it. Just at the prices, I just don't like the stack size.
Yeah.
From an overall perspective on the slate, I think there are some clear games to target and the clear games not to target. But that just means in the scope of variance in NFL football, that it may end up being the complete opposite. So, yeah, there are ways that the Lions can put up points against the Broncos, and maybe you go for it. Maybe Le'Veon Bell gets his revenge.
Yeah.
I don't think Adam Gase lets him do it. I think that's the problem. Like, I would be more inclined. Like, Le'Veon Bell at 5,800 facing the Steelers, like, I wouldn't mind using him other than the fact that, like, I just don't trust the coach.
Yeah. It's been pretty interesting to see how some of these, like Devontae Parker in particular, has really blossomed now that Adam Gase is gone.
Kenyon Drake, look at him.
Yeah. I mean, there's
who would have thought Kenyon Drake would be more valuable in fantasy than David Johnson?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
On the same team, obviously not if they played for the Dolphins or anything. That he's sitting there, so people in their season long are like, I spent the first round draft pick on David Johnson, and now he's like third on the depth chart for the Cardinals.
Yep. So what are you said there's some clear games to avoid outside of just the egregiously low total games? Are there any kind of high total games that you have pegged as just places you want to stay away from?
Probably the Saints, Titans, other than like Thomas or Kamara.
Yep, I'm with you on that one.
The Ravens, Browns, outside of maybe like naked Lamar, which I typically don't do in GPP anyway.
Yeah.
And then like not going overboard on a game like Atlanta, Jacksonville, or Cincinnati, Miami, or Arizona, Seattle. Those are good game environments, but I just think not going. I think the field is going to go more overboard. The pieces could get there, but maybe not all together.
Gotcha.
So I'm less inclined to fade. Like a lot of times I may take a chalk game and just fade all the pieces. I don't feel like this is the type of slate where I'm just going to say I'm going to have no Julio. I'm not going to have no Michael Thomas. I'm not going to have any Keenan Allen. It seems like the type of game where I'm not going to have all the pieces together, so I'm sharing similar correlations with everyone throughout the course of a 200,000 person tournament.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. No, I'm on board with you. That Tennessee New Orleans game feels like a spot I'm kind of interested in staying away from, even though it's got one of the nicer totals on the slate. So
Advanced Sports Analytics, everyone could go there. .com, AdvancedSportsAnalytics.com. Yep. Follow you on. You are on the Advanced Sports Analytics account. You don't have your own like.
Yeah, no, I don't have personal Twitter.
Okay, so that is you.
Yeah, I manage it. Brandon chimes in here and there. But yeah, man. Well, thanks for jumping on this afternoon. Thanks to Devin. I know it's been a fun season working with you and Travis and a little bit of Dean there earlier in the season. So just want to shout you guys out for helping us along the way and working with us and providing some good insight and Devin just organizing the shows each week and doing the production side of things. Really appreciate the professional job you guys have done with all of that. So much thanks. This will be our last show this season. So
even if I wasn't hosting the show, but even with Travis, even before I was on before, one of them this is the show that I look forward most each week to listen.
Oh, sweet. Well, we humbly appreciate it.
So hopefully you're back next year.
Hope so too.
Okay, so for Stewart, I'm Jordan Cooper, and this was the Advanced Sports Analytics Show on RotoGrinders.com.